thanks for coming to hang out with me.
Yeah. Yes.
In Jaisalmer, India.
Who would have thought this would be where we spend this kind of intense time?
A couple of California people. It's funny, it's where I always meet all my friends. I think what's been fascinating for me is you've been brought into this group and seem to be in many groups that are taking unique initiatives and outlooks from the world. And you've been brought in as an elder, as a wisdom keeper of many traditions. I'd be curious what lineage are you holding? Like, you speak from this eternal place of wisdom that I notice from all different traditions. Is it a specific lineage, or are you coming from a multitude of lineages? It feels like there's a deep lineage, but I can't put my finger on what I'm feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I can say I was born into some lineages, but I don't stay in the framework of that. One is that the African diaspora lineage is my birthplace in South America.
Where was that?
Guyana. In that framework, there's also Indian on my mother's side, and Irish, Scottish on my father's side.
Wow.
So that's the birth.
So you're Guyanese, Indian, and Scottish Irish.
Yes.
Amazing.
African as well. Yeah.
And did you follow the teachings? Did you study the teachings of any of those specific lineages?
No.
Where did you come? Where did this?
They weren't available. So the diaspora is that certain constructs of traditions had been lost. So Guyana is the only English-speaking country in South America. So it had already been. We were already in the learnings of the framework of the British educational system. It was former British Guyana.
Yeah.
However, spiritual reality still came into my awareness through non-verbal means, through my own observation, my own contemplations. And so from about 5 years old, I started to tune into that.
Consciously from 5 years old. So it was never a choice.
Natural inclinations of that, or memories of it, yeah.
Amazing. And when Tabriz came and introduced us, before you came up, he was like, this guy holds all the lineages you talk about. And the ones in particular are some of the more esoteric things, like Philosophical Research Society and Manly P. Hall, who's Hermetic and Kabbalic and Rosicrucianism and all the Gnostic. I don't even know what it means to be a lineage holder of that in the modern era. You know, we always picture these people in hoods in Masonic temples in the in the 1500s. But what does that even mean? What's that mean today? How does one come into holding that?
Yes. So there's always been a bit like Gnosis, Hermetic communities, the Essenes, others. Their reality was based on the futures, not the past. They were oriented by light from different cosmologies or beings. And so part of what they had to do was to renew culture.
Always.
So they go into existing traditions and renew them.
Oh, wow.
So they weren't necessarily propagating a philosophical outlook. They're just making sure that the wisdom of certain things do not die. But they have to be renewed from age to age, from communities to bring the earth into the integrity of evolution of consciousness.
Is that why it always feels like every prophet is saying the same thing?
That could be true, yeah.
You know how every prophet comes back and they reformat a religion, they're always bringing it back to...
Well, the fundamental thing is development, the evolution of consciousness. And even though we might think of the content with our mental model looking back at certain knowledge traditions, in fact, the earlier traditions didn't think this way.
Go on. What do you mean by that?
They didn't think with thoughts.
Oh,
Right? They
right.
didn't. The intellect was a developmental stage in consciousness, in which framing a conception or a perception was held with thought processes. Other times, it was really just a direct perception and a faculty development, meaning it became a capacity right away.
So do you think then all of the writings that we have attempting to write these, I mean, they're still alive today, very many of these cultures who don't think in thoughts. I had a Shipibo woman explain to me what a song meant. Mm-hmm. And she was like, it's like moving the energy this way.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Exactly.
like it translates to moving it out
Yes.
like this.
Yes.
And so there's so many cultures that are still alive. How do we, I mean, I guess two questions, and you could take them wherever you would, but like, how do we protect those in a world that's so dominated by like specific logic, writing, written language? I see it, I can scientific method it. How do we protect these? And then how do we teach people to feel or speak in these languages that are non-verbal, non-specific, non-linear? You've been speaking a lot about time recently, and the way you articulate time has made me understand it much differently. So how do we bring this to people?
Yeah. Let me go back first with the written. The written word is a symbol. Mm-hmm. There is no content in a written text. The reader of the text gives meaning to the text through the symbolic act of dedicating attention to the text. So the text leads to a beholding of the reality behind the written word, which are beings. So the beings, in interacting with this symbolic space, allows consciousness to receive something. And so the text could always lead to additional levels of consciousness. And so the cultures that started early symbolic writings, they weren't finished. They were just space holders for subsequent generations to come and add to it. So this is in a space where the symbolic mind had to develop the capacities of consciousness to ask who is speaking from the text and not projecting our inherited patterns of knowledge on the text. And so the Hermetic texts or the Gnostic texts are really doorways to superconscious realizations. They weren't taken literally the way we take our written materials now.
It seems to be, though, some of the older languages were more explicitly symbols.
Yes.
Yeah, this is clearly a symbol of something. I'm not trying to spell it out.
Right. They were creative utterances.
Yeah.
So in speaking the language, you're creating the phenomena of the reality you're speaking about. So things actually get activated, just like you mentioned a moment ago, the songs. It's just frequencies of energy that move light, magnetism, electricity, nature, into a coherent pattern that we can recognize. And it might stay for a while or could dissolve and return to nothingness. There are different levels of speech that put reality into form for certain durations of time. And then they go back into extinction.
So they really, I mean, everything we say, right, or do are incantations of creating constructs of reality.
And nature as well. As much as we may want to conserve nature, preserve nature, nature is a text.
Yeah.
It's a language between intelligences that constitutes the manifestation of certain forms of intelligence. We call animals, plants, minerals. But are they to remain as they are in our way of knowing? Probably not.
It seems like nothing is set to remain.
Nothing that has life.
And nothing in this plane, like these
Right.
molecules are organized in this specific way right now. But It feels to me that so sitting where we are in India in a culture that's kind of all the cultures that have existed in the world, it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest. I'm not a historian, but I think it's the oldest culture. Yes. And its modern spirituality has actually dragged through from the thousands of years ago, and it's still very present today.
Yes.
And if these are the people that have been taking the most cycles at life and the most amounts of attempts at explaining things, there's still a deep-rooted belief in reincarnation.
Yes.
And then when I look at science in the West, we talk about like energy can't be created or destroyed. And it seems like we're coming at the same thing. I think it would be silly for people to think today about endings and beginnings and starts and deaths and I wonder why we're so obsessed with, like, in our current incarnation of Western culture, we're so obsessed with like keeping it the way it is.
Well, the form has some intelligences. Yeah. So the whole sequence of thought around it, like energy cannot be created or destroyed, but change in form.
Yeah.
So we're obsessed with the change in forms that we're able to perceive, because behind them are certain, we say, inspirations. And then we can put our aspirations there. So when we look at the form of certain things, there's an archetype behind it that inspires human beings to want to get as close to that intelligence as possible. So forms...
And then you have these ecstatic moments of understanding, and then... Well, I touched it. You know, I think that's why people are so attracted to psychedelic experiences, because they can, like, for a second, touch that intelligence.
Right. And then, develop some level of inspiration or aspiration from that.
That's fine. I mean, I see this culture of longevity in California and New York, and I'm like, we already live forever. It's already done. There's nothing happening. There's nothing changing. It's just going to keep going.
And the body, like this particular duration of energy we call our physical existence or body, matures certain aspects of consciousness. And the interest in the yoga of the body is the fact that different beings communicate through it. It's a portal of us developing a relationship with the cosmos. So in our bodies are generations of memory from ancestors, but also the organs themselves, if you use Chinese meridian theory, moves planetary forces through it, cosmological forces through it. So it's a school for consciousness.
Evolving continually over time
for the soul to grow.
So I have a question. So when I look at my genetics, I'm Ashkenazi Jewish, I'm Italian, I'm Irish as well, and I live in this multi-ethnic world of different races and religions, and I've done sweat lodges and studied Gnosticism and gone to churches and temples and synagogues and. We're drinking ayahuasca. It's like, it's all the things, right? I mean, even in this room, we're sitting with there's Palo Santo and sage and trinkets from different. What are we practicing today? Like when I hear someone like Alan Watts speak, and I think we're all like, he's clearly drawing on eternal, like perennial philosophy. And actually, when I hear you speak, I've actually not encountered many people alive today that kind of harness this eternal wisdom and can speak to it. There's so many people that have like left organized traditions but seem to be on this path. Like what is this path? Is it a path? Is it, like I'm curious what you think it is.
Well, so we know ourselves to be on earth.
Yeah.
And some others know themselves to be in the earth, in the evolution of this sphere of reality. So from the earth realm, the earth itself is moving through a procession of consciousness. We call it the zodiac. The earth spends 2,160 years in each zodiac to amplify whatever is on earth, this particular dispensation of that zodiac. So in the last 2,000 years, we were in the zodiac of Pisces, which means the belief structures that that have emerged as religions, most people believe them to be right for what they're encountering as consciousness. We are progressing, however, to another zodiacal impulse, which is Aquarius. And in that context, knowledge, I know, is the articulation of the soul. And it's not knowledge as fact, but knowledge as a knower. I know I could know, and I don't have to believe anymore.
Like Gnosticism, like not
Yes.
Gnosticism.
But gnosis of another level of will, in which I could agree with your knowing and create something that my knowing by itself cannot do. So out of the belief of a common impulse of interest, we're now choosing to share another kind of knowing that is actually created out of our own experiences, out of the soul. So it's not knowing something that is given from the gods or from... It's knowing that we could choose to enter into relationship.
It's going in, yeah.
Into relationship with self and others to create something.
And I'm sure you. I completely agree with you. Obviously, you know, but I feel like people. When I think back to the thousands of years of history, there's always been some form of a path for people to walk. When we were in traditional groups, yeah. I think often, you know, we're in India. I think often of the 5 blind men that touched the elephant, right? You know the one where
yes.
They're all touching some part of God, but they can't really describe it, or the higher spirit. Now that we can, I'm afraid I'm sampling and not walking a path, because there seems to be no clear route anymore. I get phone calls every day. Should I go to Hoffman? Should I go to Vipassana? Where should I drink ayahuasca? Should I be learning meditation? What kind of breath work should we do?
Right.
How do people find grounding in that, or find teachers, or how does it, since we see that every time it gets organized it turns into something that we don't like, what do we even, we're clearly in a transitionary phase right now. Should we try to organize it? What do you see as the...
Yeah, it's beautiful insight to it. The intellect dismembered the human soul into parts that have been dispersed through all of these various religions and philosophies and cults and such. The exploration is an attempt to reassemble a cognitive wholeness that is the soul. However, the particular knowledge only keeps us in partitional awareness, and that is the result of the intellect. We call it the lesser mysteries, which means most of knowledge structures have to do something with rhetoric, some form of communication that allows us to have a question and an answer. Or it has some form of music in which we have the rhythms and harmonics to assimilate some sense of inspiration or intuition, or some form of geometry that allows us to expand perception, or some form of mathematics for us to calculate changes in all kinds of things. So these were the lesser mysteries in which the intellect had a way to curate a particular discipline.
Trying to figure it all out over the last years. We've compartmentalized everything into these.
Well, this is a long time. This is in thousands of years of evolution.
Yeah, they'll be trying to figure it out over the last thousands of years.
Yes.
Our brains like trying to place it.
Yeah. Well, not so much figure it out, because we created a faculty that separated it.
Yeah.
So we're actually returning now to the greater mysteries. The greater mysteries is the unification of. So in the idea of the myth of Osiris, who was dismembered, and so that's the kind of archetype. The human consciousness was spread out across the cosmos through the influence of different ages, different deities, different cosmological potentialities. And so the human being is not yet one being, at least not consciously.
Is it the human being that's not yet one being, or is it consciousness that is? It feels like somehow the human being has gotten itself separate from the collective consciousness that is the spirit world and the plant world and the animal world, and somehow
that's the nature of human being. The human being is to become separate.
There was no time before the apple. Like it's always been separate. It feels.
Well, here's the thing. It's human being.
Yeah.
The space of what we call human is not a kind of just a substance or form. It's an intelligence. The intelligence is about the development of a particular kind of will. The human is a will being that has to will free will. So if you don't know your will is free, how would you will it? Right? So in the processes of evolution in the human experience, we're discovering a kind of language, a kind of coherence to optimize freedom from nature, from cosmos, from each other, because the essential nature of the will is to give it freely.
But yeah, we're doing everything we can to separate it from everything that
we may have another 10,000 years of evolution in consciousness to go. In the reality that we live with now, we think we're running out of time.
But I don't think we're running out of time. I can't.
Well, the paradigm.
I can't get behind that argument that we're about to die in 7 years.
Right. So, that's the paradigm of the existing measurements of things. So if we take science as they project that we only have so much of certain substances and oxygen, and this is the paradigm. We created that paradigm.
Yeah.
And we're living from it. But we might die from it too. We might die from our own creation.
If anything, probably that would likely be what does it.
And then, just like you said, the older civilization knew that you will reincarnate, so maybe we'll have another.
Yeah, I mean, humans have had apocalypse theories since the beginning of time, and you and I are still having this conversation.
Yeah.
Civilizations have collapsed.
Not from the beginning of time, beginning of the modern era of consciousness. Because when it's a modern, we're talking about where Genesis says this is the beginning, and then Exodus,
Where do you and I mean, you have had a clearly interesting journey around many different wisdom traditions that have been able to weave together this cohesive worldview and speak to it well over your lifetime. I've had much less time and but I feel like I've woven together some type of tapestry. Where do you even tell someone who's just left their job, just left their church, and they're like, it's undeniable. I think what's happening in the world right now is like it's undeniable something else. It's undeniable like something else is happening, right? There's something coming that's amazing. And it's this unifying of all the worldviews, all the theologies, all the religions, the perennial philosophy, the global panentheistic worldview, seeing all the religions as one. Where do you send someone to go? Is it case by case? Is it like, how do we... I just feel this like... I'm sure you get it all the time. Like, how does someone start their journey to maybe end up where you are?
Well, we look at the time element. Do you feel you're the beginning of something, the middle of something, or the end of something? In your life.
In your life.
Right? In your life, there is a duration of some experience. And we know to measure. Some things are unfamiliar, some things are very familiar. And some things are coming to a point in which we say, I'm ready to change. we have that kind of reflective capacity. Everyone does. You ask, how long have you been suffering? Not all my life, or all my life, or some part of my life. Do you suffer when you're with certain people and not with others? We know these things because that's a self-examination. The Western mind, which includes almost most of the world, must be able to assess consciousness from a reflective point of view. We must be able to say, in my perception of reality, this is who I am. Because no one is making us who we are. We're making ourselves by
That's terrifying for
our
people. I
perception.
believe that's terrifying for most people.
Well,
you know?
So whose eyes are these? Mine. Whose ears are these? Mine. Reality cannot come into consciousness unless it passes through these sense organs. Right?
Yeah.
There is no body living here other than me. Right? Yes, we pick up all kinds of stimulations from others, but there is a kind of agreement in that. I've agreed to be in this civilization at this time, which means I'm exposed to all the influences of this civilization. Or I could have waited. I think we have no choices other than the impulse to be born at this time in this place. We choose certain portals of initiation, and this is it. We choose to be at risk in this current age, the way we are, and we choose to explore how to be in relationship to create something different. The human being is never without choice. Again, we are beings of will, and nothing compels us other than our own experiences and our interests and our capacities to show up as we are in the world. And even if we are unconscious about it, that is part of our consciousness.
So crazy what we choose to participate in.
Yeah.
You know, all the time, these games that we choose to participate in that are...
Right.
And maybe that's what it means by waking up. When people like wake up to their, like, oh, I don't
think so.
have to
I
shoot this
agree.
gun at this person
Yeah,
right now. I
right.
don't have to hate this person right now.
Right.
You speak a lot about love and coming from this place of love. And I think just waking up to like your choice that you can choose that at any given time.
Well, there's a kind of magnetism in which one can say the probability that you'll find somebody to love is actually very, very, very high. It's one of the greatest probability fields we have.
Yeah.
It's even getting harder to find somebody you hate.
It does feel
It's
that way.
I mean,
It
but that
really
is-
does feel that
That
way.
is planetary coherence.
There is something going
Yes.
on right now.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like I feel
Yeah.
so blessed to be alive today.
Yeah.
The fact that we can have a conversation about 50 different wisdom traditions, sitting in a fortress in the desert in Jaisalmer, India, with a huge diversity of people, from indigenous wisdom keepers to entrepreneurs to women Indian entrepreneurs to American, and everyone's like, there's definitely something happening.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess the question is, with coming from a place of spirit and of consciousness and of will, is it do we need to will it to happen faster? You know, do we need to organize this thing that we feel happening? Like, I think people want to do something about it.
Right.
Right? And, their Zen master would say just be.
Yeah.
But it feels like there's something compelling people towards action in a positive or in a love-based direction.
Yeah. Well, I think love is a catalyst, but also a kind of which includes the chemistry of my own inspiration and aspirations. But in a way, we're still under the influence of certain guiding principles that are in the spheres of light. Light is intelligent. It organizes reality from possibility. So if you say all those stars are possible sources of light. But we don't live by those. We live by the sun. One star organizes all of these billions of people on Earth. One star. Why? Why is it that this one controls so much of our projections of consciousness into time and future? Because it is intelligent. It holds a certain power over our will. And it gives also a certain dynamism for how we develop that will. Right? We have periods of darkness where we see the moon and the stars and could draw from that. But most people would prefer electric light than the light of the moon or the light of the stars. So this particular energy we call our sun has governed different civilizations, and we've lived from those organizing principles of that and get poetry and songs from the stars when they're out. But the work we do is from the sun.
For eternity.
Yeah, it's...
We've talked about this before, but I researched it last year for a long period of time, and I was hard pressed to find any spiritual system, belief system, group, or like any group that's ever come together as humans that hasn't used the sun to organize its time. Some also use the moon.
Right.
Some use the moon more, but the way they decide on the moon is based on how the sun gives it light.
Right.
So everything comes back, but yet in mainstream conversations today, talk of the influence of the sun and the moon and the stars is seen as like new age spiritual and hippie woo-woo. And the funny thing is it's like the only objective, observable reality in humanity. So are we seeing like a religion of the sun come back? Or
well, of the soul.
Not a religion, but a belief system centered around the sun. Because what's happening, I think, and my teachers like the Michael Murphy and the people from Esalen and the Human Potential Movement, like they always talked about the global pantheistic religion coming together of one world, the perennial philosophy. It seems like if we blend all the world's religions and belief systems together, what's at the core of it is nature and consciousness.
For a period of time.
Yeah.
The intellect has to change that.
The intellect has to change it.
The intellect has changed our relationship even to nature. Our intellect has put us in a thought life experience, where even the thinking behind the thoughts are hidden still, so that we depend upon a certain kind of rhetoric, a certain kind of accumulated knowledge from ancestral traditions, to the degree that we have propagated libraries. We've had so massive amounts of accumulated knowledge that we project as the space where another generation or multiple generations will come and learn. We don't understand that the context for consciousness is not our particular way of speech. A child gives up, an infant child gives up this coherence to actually speak all languages for one. Why? Because of the commitment to stay in a shared reality with their parents or whomever gives love. But the child chooses, not with a thought, but this is the procedure of consciousness. They go through a self-sacrificing to make sacred the objective of communication between them and someone else.
And as soon as you start to form your thoughts in those languages, you start to shape your reality.
It does, right away.
Without question.
And then it's harder to re-enter and appreciate some other form of intelligence.
I had a mentor friend from many years ago, this guy Amory Lovins, and he's a physicist. towards the end of his career, and now in his life, he's been working with bonobos. Bonobos. He believe, and his joke is that he thinks they evolved from us. It was like they live in a matriarchal society, fully symbiotic with their environment, complete language, no job, no work, no war. They poop over here, it grows food later. They live fully symbiotically with their environment. We're not even close to living symbiotically with our environments. And I wonder if it's the construct of whatever language they have. And I mean, whales have languages, dogs have language, all these animals have languages, and somehow they've been able to remain in symbiosis with the natural ecosystem. Yet for some reason, we have this tension that draws us out.
Yeah, because not nature receded in our own soul life to allow another book to open. The book that we're reading from have symbols in them. The symbolic world is where the human being chose to leave the archetypal world, where it's more like totems. The totems that the totemic cults live with nature. Something in nature articulated an intelligence through which they navigated their cult or their civilization, their communities of memory. So you were a bear person or a whale person or a hummingbird person, based on the fact that those animals communicated something in the creative life of that community. We moved to speech. Speech shaped our communities of memory, stories, songs.
And it continues.
Ritual. Yeah.
Ritual's so profound.
Profound in our development, moving now to an artistic expression in which we shaped our environment by design. Different and some still based on nature, but then we improvised and added technologies to that. And we are the species that have had the development of more tools than any of the other life forms on this planet. Not because, one tool wasn't enough, a tool to dig was great when we had to farm and put seeds in the ground. But why do we want to move faster? Why do we develop chariots?
And what compels that?
Well, because we had a discovery that in our creative life we could also play, we could also compete, we could also challenge, we could also conquer.
Hearing us talk, I'm just deeply reflective on people are so mad that we're not in symbiosis with our environment. People are upset that but what an extraordinary life we get to live. No, why the anti-human mentality? People today have this you're burning the fuel, you're killing the rainbow, we're figuring it. I believe that we're inherently good as people, and we're figuring out how to solve all the problems that we create as best we can. But where did we lose the almost zest for life? In the mainstream narrative of today, it's how bad everything is going. But what an extraordinary time it is to be alive in 2024.
Well,
it's truly
one of these patterns that have become so dominant. We outsource everything that our will should be doing.
Yeah.
We made labor someone else's job. We made burying our dead someone else's job. We stopped doing what our will should be learning to do for free. In a way of development. We created a civilization for others to do. And then we benefit. Right?
Yeah.
So it's not just nature. We separate it from our own will. We don't know our will. We know the the power of governing someone else's will. We know how to enslave other people's will. We know how to, promote advertising to someone else's will. But we don't know the use of our own.
Yeah, for what? For why are we doing these things?
Our will cannot create a new thought. Our own will cannot create love for another. It cannot create our own perception to feel the suffering of others. Our will is exiled from our own creativity, and that is where the lost happen.
And this is the mission. This is the goal of waking up:
That's
is to discover your own will.
Is discover your own will.
My guess is that when people discover their own will, there's a lot less doing of bending other people's will to their will, and
it will come down to how can I serve you?
Yeah.
Because if I can put service in my will, I'm at the highest level of our current civilization.
And I think when I think back on that topic of every religion that I know about, the sacrament after marriage and partnership is service.
Service, yeah.
In everyone.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
At this phase of life.
Yes. Yes.
It's a fascinating moment. It's a fascinating moment to be alive when we're in such a great transition, but towards such a great beauty. Yet, the consistent belief is the fear.
Yeah, and this is it probably will be the most rewarding growth space in human consciousness is to overcome that.
What do you think allowed for that?
For the fear to come.
What was the leverage point that cracked open this moment? I feel the same way you do about
that something will happen without my will. The fear is that something will happen without my will.
That's the most pervasive human fear.
Right. But it's not really true.
Yeah.
It's a fact, but it's not true. Meaning that we have experiences in which things happen without our will. But at what level? Mostly on the level of perception. My perception is something is happening without my will. On the level of higher cognition.
People seem to really like that when things happen without their will. You hear a lot of these born again, all the religions. They're like, my life got good as soon as I surrendered to Jesus, as soon as I surrendered to X, Y, or Z. But it's saying the same thing that you're saying, but it's surrendering to.
Well, the yoga puts us in that gesture, right? The yoga is a correcting of the chemistry of life. If you learn to breathe, certain other faculties become effortless.
Yeah.
You learn to posture, certain other things become active. The chemistry requires intention to light it at a level in which it creates the consciousness we want to receive from. So if I'm not creating a beginning will, I can't receive it. I can't receive what comes from exercise. But the human being must exercise something in order for the will to be discovered.
Every meditation teacher, even as far as Eckhart Tolle, it's all about observing the thinker.
Yeah.
Noticing that you're not the thoughts that come.
Right.
All the meditation teachers from time immemorial.
What do people ask you for the most, in a way of relationship? What do you think comes up in that space?
I just get asked the question so often of hey, I just broke up with my boyfriend or quit my job, and what should I do? What book should I read? What retreat should I go to? And it's I don't know. I guess I perpetually oscillate between thinking that I've somehow been blessed with an extraordinary life. I've never made a whole lot of money, but I've gotten this extraordinary lot of experiences, and I think it's based more on my curiosity than on my success or wealth, and I got really lucky into where I was born and the opportunities that I've had because of it. But because of that, I've gotten to sample all these things, and so I think I'm seen by some of my friends as someone who knows a lot about these things, but I didn't live in the Amazon for 20 years. I haven't lived on top of a mountain studying meditation. I've never gone completely into the path like so many people have. And I think there's this new, religion of no religion, or community of spiritual but not religious people who have an opportunity to try all these things. But, if you're Jewish, people are like, here's a hat, here's a book, here's a school, here's a schedule, here's a bunch of other people, like, we're here to help you, call us if you need anything.
Yeah.
If you're spiritual but not religious, people are like, here's every ritual that's ever existed in the history of humans.
Right.
Good luck.
Yeah.
So I think people just want to know, like, and I guess not even, people want to know, like, I don't know if I'm heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
I have no way of knowing because the path I'm walking is so new. My ancestors, and by my ancestors I mean like my parents, did not have a sliver of the opportunity to experience the diversity of spiritual teachings that I've gotten to experience with relatively little money and relatively little effort. And this is just increasing exponentially. My friend is flying Kogis and Shapibos to conferences in New York and Paris, and we're intersecting them with something's happening.
Yes.
But nobody knows what it is. So when people ask me what book should I read or what should I do, they're really asking, like, what the fuck is going on?
Right.
And am I doing it right?
Right.
And how do you even give someone reassurance in that?
And the answer is yes and no. Meaning that the right is, if you can use what you're doing, what you're studying, then yes, it's right. If you can't, then give it up, find something else.
Yeah.
The need for confirmation is getting high. And so what I've done for many years now is really just make a space of sanctuary for a person. Said, you know what? Don't worry about the effort to achieve something before you achieve stillness. Be here, come here. Pull all the attention back from all of the projections and invite your presence of will. Let it be as soft as possible. Let it be just gratitude. Let it be empty. The critical thing about any step forward is knowing when to begin. Beginning is not a thing in the world. Beginning is this sense that I am will. And from that, I am willing. Without the willingness, things are pulling us through the world. We get tired of them.
Even the question, what book should I do next? What ceremony should I go to? Even that question is so external.
It's a chariot. It's
Yeah,
a chariot.
It's just dragging you forward.
It's a chariot. We want to sit at the back and let something pull us.
I mean, I think when given the option, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and sometimes I have these like daydream fantasies of someone just telling me what to do and giving me money. It's like I think so many humans have this like desire. It's like if there's got to be someone smarter. Just tell me what to do.
Yeah, they're chariots. They're only...
But there isn't someone smarter that can tell you what to do.
Well, in mentorship, because I've done that, I've been in mentorship relationship with many people. But the idea of mentor, the being behind a mentoring relationship was Aphrodite. It was a goddess of love and wisdom. Right? You can't mentor a person unless you love the thing you're already serving.
Yeah, a mentor's not telling you what to do, but
Right.
they're loving you through the process.
All the stuff that you go through and help you to come back to
get a little bit of perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
And you carry each other's life along the way. So these used to be the framework for the development of the intellect. The intellect was mentored. When you go to the academy, it wasn't being forced to memorize something. It was a dialogue with people who knew how to access symbolic and ideal states of consciousness. And then the practitioner was mentored by that because the deities to whom the learning was dedicated governed the community of practice. We don't have a community of practice. We have people hiring other people to do things that they don't want to.
I mean, even they're doing their yoga
Yes.
for them. I mean,
Right.
going to a
Yes.
yoga class is having
Yes.
someone else do your yoga for
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Very few
Yeah.
people are doing yoga alone in their bedrooms
Right.
without a video or something.
Right. And it's like the archetype gets lost because the current mind is that we're constantly criticizing ourselves for not getting it right or losing
I
attention.
couldn't feel that more.
Losing attention because the person next to you is doing it better. These are things that we think we can go to these experiences and achieve something, not knowing the things that are in our way is actually in our way. Our own self-concept is a path that has led us out of just feeling good about anything. And this is a critical thing about whether it's, the body type or age or gender or whatever. How to get the person to say, I am here in this body, in this time, in this mind, and begin a dialogue with it. It's the most unique conversation we could be in.
Presence.
Yes.
And coming to presence with, everything set up to take us out of presence.
Right.
You look at these people who are the wealthiest people in the world financially right now, and they're the people who demand the most of our attention. Mm. That's it. Mm. It's not about the money. It's not about the products they sell. It's that those things demand our attention. Mm. And they've risen because of the tools of distracting our attention have gotten so good. Mm. These people have become some of the wealthiest people that have ever existed on the planet. Mm. And the simplest way to do anything is to just have your own attention and presence to yourselves. It's so hard.
And we will say
hard
until now, meaning that communities are discovering ways to step out of some of these patterns.
Yeah.
People are realizing that, they've given, themselves to a certain kind of misdirection. Yeah. And we are returning to this soulful coherence because the patterns that are guiding now are getting stronger as well.
We started a small meditation movement in New York in 2014. And right around that moment, I was thinking, I think meditation is getting popular right now out of sheer utilitarian necessity. These tools of attention grabbing and attention shattering have hit a level where the tools that we know as humans to counteract that, they just become less about awakening and more about if you're going to use a phone, you need to know how to meditate. It just comes hand in hand with knowing how to send email. And I do think that these tools that we have are wildly powerful in a positive way. Mm-hmm. But I think we're just coming out of a huge phase of, we just connected the world. It's been a prophecy for thousands of years, and we just did it.
Yeah. Yes.
I almost feel like we should give everyone a pat on the back. We got everyone connected. We got all the information shared for free.
Yes.
Now let's learn how to live.
We live in harmony with
it,
with ourselves and each other. Yeah. And this is really, we're at the beginning of a harmonic age, a harmonic vibrancy, which means we're switching between the self-interest that the body has inherited and interest in futures that light is creating. Because even our intellect cannot overcome the emerging world paradigm. And we see this in the growing phenomena of some of the very thing that we're doing now, exploring what we know and why. So there's more of this
Yeah.
in the last 5 years.
It's been exponential.
And and I think people have probably, because of Zoom and the pandemic, we've actually engaged more meaningful dialogues than any other time, given what our capacities have been.
I think the pandemic was such an amazing, I mean, obviously terrible and horrific for so many people, but as a collective, for those of us who are lucky to be on the non-negative side of that, but like, we just, for the first time ever as humans, had a collective experience together. The entire planet
Right.
had an experience and could talk to each other about it. And that's going to have ramifications positively. We're just learning to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And
Yes, and knowing someone that did not survive it.
Yeah.
Many people know someone who knows someone, at least.
Yeah.
1 or 2 degrees of separation from someone who's lost their life. This phenomena has shifted our self-consciousness significantly at the scale in which it happened. And so, the human being still lives in a reality in which radical change is how we come into coherence of futures. We do not yet accept that we could choose a future, because we still believe circumstances will bring us to it, and that is we have to outgrow that paradigm.
so, Orland, the future is bright? Are we moving towards a positive moment in human history, or are we careening off the edge of a cliff to disaster?
Given that the sun is dedicated to coming up tomorrow, I think the future is bright. Again, we have forces living in that.
Yeah.
We still think it's our minds that makes reality. It is not. Our minds do not make reality. Our minds reflect reality. We capture light through our minds. That is, our minds are not the source of any reality that we've lived into. We've forgotten that. And we think we can still keep the mental adventure of planning our futures. And we realize that it's failing us fast. So the soul, the space where we have memory of prior civilizations and memory of capacities to be open to future civilization, we're in a soulful shift from the consciousness of mind to the consciousness of heart, in which our will actually choose a sacrifice in order to get out of this crisis. We will choose to make something sacred because there will be no other way to rationalize power without love. No other way to rationalize. It will be almost like creating a double consciousness in which I lose more and more the power to live in this reality.
Yeah. And people are just choosing. Anyone that sees and touches this new way of thinking about the world, no one's going back to the old way. It's just, I'd never see anyone go the other direction.
It's still, and time is vast.
Yeah, we have a lot of people and a lot of time.
We have a lot of,
So, we can cut this up and change it up, but where can people find you? What are you working on now? How can people support what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm coming back from ceremony. I was in ceremony in December and January, and this is the first exploration of support for the community that invited me here. The paradigm from where I would work has changed from, say, working from this is a crisis, let's move things around, to going to the source more directly. And the source would be, for me, my own soul activity and the relationships of light that has guided me through very, very, very difficult journeys of self-discovery. not as a sense of suffering, but a sense of sacrifice, making sacred the space for something else to come. I had to give up a lot. Careers, opportunities, money, all kinds of things, so that the paradigm gets resolved. The paradigm of the intellect gets resolved. And trust in invisible guidance, which makes up all futures, if we're to get there, and trust in the human being's potential to rectify our will from withholding to sharing and giving. This has been the practice for the last 30 years. Can the will mature the capacity to truly dedicate itself towards love and light? For me, I had to know that for myself.
And you seem to find yourself in holding that capacity and that concept of love and light and your ability to reflect what's happening in really high impact rooms with people that are in positions of vast influence in the world that are waking up to seeing the world this way.
Yeah.
Are you looking to be in more rooms like that, or how can... There's very few elders and wisdom keepers of multi-lineage background that are around. So I guess my question is, like, how can we support getting you in the places where you want to go or be or use your energy?
I appreciate the question. I mean, I always welcome conversation. For me, we enter into reality through conversation.
Yeah.
Because I really don't have an interest in a form
Like
of
a
saying
entity, yeah.
I really feel there's an ecology in the love consciousness space. There's an ecology in the humanitarian service space, which is being called all over the world. Doctors Without Border, all kinds of things without border. Really is the phenomena of an ecology that is expanding because people's professional life is no longer personal. In a way of this, I'm going to do this to get this. The professions that we have cultivated in our modern world could meet the crisis of our modern world when the currencies of our modern world becomes abundant. We have been living from currencies that have to be scarce in order to be valuable. It forces people to compete. It outsources will towards manufacturing more and more stuff and not making a space for the things between life and light and love to come into reality. Our monetary system is outdated. It's outdated. It's incomplete in relationship to the age in which we live.
Luckily, it seems like we have a lot of people working on that right now.
Well, so we have people working on financial models,
right?
Not monetary models.
Yeah.
Monetary system is still held by the banking infrastructure.
There's new versions of the same thing.
Yes. So another fund could help move resources to spaces between life and light and love. However, the idea of fiat is to create something out of nothing.
It's so good.
And
totally.
That's what fiat is.
I've never heard it that way.
An authority that regulates the will, not only of themselves, but of others. But here is where the agreement power for another level of sovereignty is to share the reality that we want to co-create, not assign it to someone. We cannot create another reality and assign it to someone. It doesn't work. And we can't create another currency and assign it to people's labor. It doesn't work. So what I'm talking about love is not is not a medium of exchange of something. Love is the raising of the vibrancy in which forgetfulness stop happening, in which what gives us a sustained sense of creative life keeps flowing between us. And it's the most enduring substance that humanity can share. It's far more powerful than memory.
Housekeeping is arrived to tell us. Perfect timing housekeeping.
Come and take care of the house of light.
It's okay. Hello.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, I need to take a shower.
This is
Clear a
incredible.
little
Thank
bit
you
of the day.
so much. There's so many good nuggets in there.
Yes, this is a gift. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for the hospitality for it.